Kia ora. Today I'm taking a look at what was arguably one of the most important LEGO Hobbit sets to release for the Hobbit line. Specifically, this is set 79018, The Lonely Mountain, which released in 2014 alongside the final Hobbit movie in that trilogy. The set here contains 866 pieces, 5 total minifigures, all of them being exclusive, and it retailed for 130 USD or 250 NZD. The markup on this thing was huge because even in Australia this thing was less than 200 Australian dollars, and when converted it was still less than 200 NZD, so Jesus man, what were LEGO thinking? Nowadays though, you're looking at around 800 NZD sealed or 650 NZD in some used conditions. And the set overview here for the Lonely Mountain is the Throne of Erebor, the central destination for our dwarves throughout the entire trilogy, and important for the line of Hobbit sets because this was the only way that you could get the amazing dragon mold of Smaug. Exclusive minifigures are cool and all, but the dragon is the real selling point here. I love the look of the set stylistically speaking. That sand green used throughout looks really enticing despite maybe not being the most accurate towards the source material of the movie. The set has a lot of features too, where gimmicks are plentiful, and the final display looks pretty interesting and unique for that theme as well. We start with a tiny little armory section down below, which seems pretty standard for these Middle-earth sets, a brick-built anvil and a few tools of weapons here and some battle armor as well. Above here is our forge, where we have some tools for smelting gold throughout the set. Our forge is built like a catapult, and you can briefly spot some gold pieces there. Located by a nice area with enough display room for our minifigures, some nice stickered parts here as well of the Dwarvish language. Located directly above the secret entrance here where the company uses to sneak into the mountain. Our machine wheel up top here can move around nice and easy, and it lowers the winch attached to the bucket for collecting our gold in the scene. Down below we do have a nice little slide, which is supposed to be a way to transport some gold found here or something. This is also where we can see the set actually be split apart, because we do have these really nice Technic connections that keep everything here in place. It's after transporting the gold here that we can use the wheel above to pick this thing up and move it along to our forge. I've said before, I do really love conveyor belt like builds in LEGO sets. This style of play really worked for me as a kid, and as an adult it just makes for a really interesting display overall. After you've lowered the gold into the big bucket, you can actually launch that melted gold at the dragon. The parts will go everywhere of course, but it's pretty fun and accurate to what happens in the movie. We'll spin the set around now and take a look at the quote interior. There's really not a lot here unfortunately, just besides a little bit of extra standing room. Like, some of this area is just nothing. On the lower level we do have a pretty cool gym-like area where the Arkenstone can be mined. The stone is set on some bricks with some translucent pieces placed around here, but besides that there's really nothing here, man. The stone actually serves a function for this side of the build here. The throne itself, which consists of a big chair and steps, actually using a play feature as well. You can push on the trigger at the back here and these steps will actually fly forward. Push harder and it really does fly forward. And featured on the inside here we have some more gold for the dwarves to go and find. I do really like the overall design of the throne, which feels pretty ornate with all those colors, parts and stickers used here. The chair is easily removed if you really want to. The sticker here has a hole directly in the middle for the stud up top. The chair is missing its key decoration, which is the Arkenstone, that thing that we found earlier in the mine. You can easily just remove it from that mine area and apply it to the chair here. This is Smaug's most prized possession and the piece of treasure that the dwarves desire the most. You can see that the stud here is also, I believe, a printed piece to really make it feel that much more special. The final addition to this giant build here is a big bulky pile of gold, a treasure trove for the middle of our scene. We have quite a few of these Middle-earth sets releasing that feature decorative parts for the center stages of their builds. I really like this actually overall. I love simple designs like this. There's a chest-like structure here that can be lifted out, and inside we have a couple of gems. There's nothing major, it just really adds to the overall treasure loot of the set. A genuine impressive inclusion here was Smaug though, who was again only featured in this one exclusive set. Described as being red in the book, the movie kind of makes him look like a bit of a burgundy color, maybe closer to brown. I do really love the red here though, and the special parts that are used to make him just amazing. For the most part, it's an entirely exclusive design, part of what made the set so expensive and still is to this day. The base idea of the molds aren't necessarily new. We have seen dragons before and after, but the prints and the overall design of these sections like the neck and the wings are what make him such a great unique addition to this theme. He measures to around 24 centimeters high, 47 centimeters long and 42 centimeters wide with his wings fully extended. It's such great interesting parts like his neck, which feel like would have been an amazing part to use for a fell beast back in the day. We do have a couple of extra parts here on the back to just kind of build up the top of the body, and some tooth and horn parts are included for extra detail as well. There's printing on the side of his legs here, pretty nice scales, and the same printing can be found on the other side of the body. There's even more more printing here featured around the torso as well. I loved the printing on him when I was younger, where you can see his actual weakness in the scales. His tail connector pieces appear to be the only parts that he borrows from other themes. The final piece here that makes his tail though is unique to just him. Easily the most impressive thing for Smaug is this feature of the wings. The figure actually has something in the ways of articulation where you can actually have them fully extended out like so, or have them folded up. The material used here is a rubber-like plastic that I can't for the life of me recall if LEGO have used again. I don't think I've ever seen another LEGO character feature anything as cool as this. Smaug truly impressed me, and I'm really thankful that I managed to get this at the time of its release. Now as for our actual minifigure inclusions of the set, first up here we have Bilbo Baggins, which is a fancy new variant of that character. He uses the exact same facial expressions that he's had in previous sets, where he has this kind of look of distraught. It's the same kind of expression that I imagine Isaac Clarke has on a regular basis. I love the blue torso detailing here. It's one of the more definitive costumes that I personally think about if I have to think about Bilbo in these movies. This was one of the costumes he wore throughout 2 of the 3 films. Bilbo features an alternate expression of great concern, which is another expression that we have seen before on previous releases. Here's a very quick comparison to the Unexpected Journey release figure. You can see, like I mentioned, that the face and the hairpiece are really the same, the biggest difference here just being that torso. Our first dwarf here is Balin, who's pretty cool. He features a really special beard and hair mold. This was his second release. In fact, the same can be said for all 4 of the dwarves that are released in this set, all seeing their second releases here, but all featuring exclusive prints in the torso. He uses some kind of hammer-like mace weapon, and he utilizes that same red color scheme like he did in the first Hobbit movie sets. Underneath the fancy hairpiece we can see his 2 expressions, a neutral happy one and a very angry determined one, the same ones that are used in the Hobbit hole set. A comparison to show off the 2 variants side by side. I love all of these Hobbit dwarf figures so much from the first movie. They all have such very special unique looks. The mountain armor, it looks fine, it just doesn't really do anything for me compared to those ones if I'm honest. Dwalin was always a pretty cool figure to have from the previous release because of those special tattoos he has on his head. Now if you missed that set, good news, you get him this time. It makes him very distinct compared to the other dwarf figures. This guy uses the color of green and he features an axe with a partly transparent axe head, which does seem pretty cool and stand out quite well. He does not feature a double-sided expression though, since he already has printing on the back of his head. If I remove that beard piece, we can see a bit more of that expression and some of the torso detailing here as well. Compared to his previous release here, we do miss that cape, which I thought was really cool at the time. He also appears sleeveless here, and he featured this really awesome brick-built hammer. I gotta say, those Unexpected Journey figures really are doing this job better for me. This here is Kili, the dwarf brother of Fili, and the hair is the most distinguishable difference. Long black hair for this guy and the color of gunmetal grey for his torso. He's definitely the least interesting figure so far, just because I think that color scheme is lackluster compared to the others. It's not nearly as exciting. The hairpiece is one of my all-time favorites. It's long hair in LEGO that's been molded to interact with additional pieces. It's amazing, and unfortunately, it isn't really utilized all that often even by today's standards. He doesn't include an extra piece here though, so the inclusion does feel a little odd. It's cool because it feels like he features useful parts for cannon fodder like minifigures if you really wanted some generic parts for your soldiers. Double-sided expression of an even angrier look than usual. Compared to his original figure though, we can see that the hairpiece is working alongside the quiver. It's such a cool addition to me. I've never really felt any certain way towards either of these figures honestly. The first figure just barely beats this guy because of the quiver inclusion, but the lackluster coloring compared to those other dwarf figures, it does kind of sour him a little bit. This here is our final dwarf figure. This is Fili the dwarf, brother to Kili, and the hair is the most distinguishable difference. He uses the color of blue for his armor design, and he looks pretty good actually. He features 2 swords like his bro, but this time in a different color. The torso printing here feels less generic to me compared to his brother's one, which he features the same details as the previous release and the same comments that I made about his brother. The expression is very mad, but removing the hairpiece, we can see a happier expression here instead. I think he's the goofier brother. That would probably explain why he's like that. He's not burdened with the thoughts of Evangeline Lilly. Compared to that previous release though, where he is represented in the color of brown, I think that this guy's a nice inclusion, but again, the hairpiece is only really impressive when it's actually working against a molded piece. That there covers the Erebor set from the final wave of the LEGO Hobbit sets. I don't think that these ones performed nearly as well as the Lord of the Rings sets. There were less sets released for the Desolation of Smaug and the Battle of the Five Armies, but I like this one a lot just as much as the other Hobbit set I looked at. The colors are really striking here, and the playset style conveyor belt like structure is a really fun idea to mess around with here. I think the Forge is cool, and I even think if you weren't into LEGO Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit at the time, but you were into LEGO Castle, there's definitely enough here that warrants that kind of a purchase because it feels distinct enough from the Castle line. It's a great set overall, and it was really the only one doing something as unique as this. If you enjoyed this look at an older LEGO Hobbit set, liking this video and subscribing to the channel helps to support more future content like this. Ka kite anō everyone, I hope to see you all next time.